speaker, Mr. Arun Krishnamurthy. He was very busy today and he has spared some time for our conference. He is a well-known Indian environmentalist and social entrepreneur who has initiated campaign of cleaning various rivers. He is known for founding the NGO known as Environmentalist Foundation of India. A television series titled Neeram Nilamam, directed by him, was also highly applauded. He is the recipient of numerous awards for his earnest endeavors to save environment, including Jane Goodall Institute Global Youth Leadership in 2010, Google Alumni Impact in 2011, and Rolex Award for Enterprise in 2012. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dhruv, for that kind introduction. And I thank the organizers for giving us this platform on this very special day. Happy World Environment Day to all of you. The focus of my entire presentation is going to be on lakes, ponds, and wetlands across India. And I am actually sharing my screen. I don't know if you're able to see it. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to see the blog about the Karimadam Pond in Trivandrum?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So I'll get started. So EFI's journey is a 13-year-old journey where we started wondering as to how we're going to revive our lakes and ponds. This is something which all of us are constantly worried about because we see our neighborhood lake or a pond get converted into a dump site where construction debris is dumped or garbage is dumped or our household sewage is let in, and a good fresh water drinking source is more often than once reduced to nothing but a landfill or a soak pit. And in the subsequent years we face acute water shortage, we have a drought, or when it rains there's no place for the fresh water to get stored, our household colonies get flooded. This has been a repeat situation in many urban centers across India. Also, the fact that several of these lakes and ponds are often misunderstood just to be a water holding cavity. But we often forget that how these are habitats where several lives can thrive, and every lake or a pond has a story to tell. Some of these water bodies are historic evidences of man's early intervention with nature to conserve water. And even such water bodies are not respected, and that's primarily because for most of us we don't live in the cities, we just are there to survive, to make a living out of that city. Because we do not have an emotional connection to our urban centers, we fail to actually conserve any natural landscape in the urban pockets. And the first victims for most of these are the lakes, ponds, beach fronts or the river fronts in our respective cities. What you're seeing on screen is images from God's own country, Kerala. And this pond is in the heart of the state capital, Trivandrum. When we first went to Trivandrum, which is roughly around 4 years ago, to talk to the district administration to see if we can adopt water bodies which we can clean and revive and restore, the first thought was probably there are no dirty water bodies in the state that we'll have to take up. But to our surprise and shock, the then sub-collector took us to this colony and showed us what you're technically seeing on screen. A beautiful neighborhood pond which was constantly being dumped with non-degradable trash over 2-3 decades, which converted this drinking water source into a cesspool. And then we started working on this water body. We still continue to work on this water body because it's a never-ending challenge. It's more like a dirty treasure hunt. The more we dig, the more we find garbage from every corner of this tiny little pond. And as we keep, it's just a 2.2 to 2.4 acre odd lot pond with depths reaching up to 20 to 30 feet in some pockets, which we're not even able to completely assess. And just imagine what a beautiful storage this could be, given that Trivandrum is also a coastal city, especially when there is impact of erosion, sea erosion, salinity and more, groundwater becoming saline and more. If this water body had been cleaner, if this water body was a drinking water source, think about the amount of water that could have been conserved here and been distributed to so many people. Today, what we're doing is we're paying for water. All of us are paying for a natural resource that should come to us at no cost. Why are we paying for drinking water? And that's largely happening because we fail to protect such large lakes or small neighborhood ponds. As we kept cleaning this water body, we found everything from idols to photographs to certificates to batteries to dead dogs. Everything that you can assume was found in this dirty little pond. Is it the pond's fault? And we all would immediately assume that the neighborhood residents don't care. They all immensely care. The day we started working there, from then they've been our backbone support. They all want to see this water body restored. But what we need to understand is there is a stakeholder approach to this. There are multiple players when it comes to conservation of a lake or a pond. If you're thinking that money is the solution to all these problems, it's definitely not. And I often remind all my audience, please don't say that India is a poor country. We're not. We have a lot of money in some pockets and we have absolutely no money for a lot of other things. It's only about finding the right people who can fund such projects. We were fortunate to convince the IndusInd Bank to fund this restoration effort. Following which, then we went to the Kerala District Administration, the Trivandrum Collectorate, the municipal authorities. There are so many administrative blocks that one has to overcome before reviving a pond such as this. You will also wonder that to dump garbage into this pond, nobody needed any permission. But to clean the garbage that's been dumped into this pond, you need multiple levels of permissions. That's where the irony lies. And it's not that the officers don't care. There are select set of officers and wonderful bureaucrats within the system who really want to do things. But again, everything falls flat because there is no comprehensive, collaborative cohesion when it comes to executing all this work. So once the permissions are in place, then the money is found, you convince the stakeholders, which includes the community which lives around this water body. The challenges are there is long periods of no rain, or there is sudden flashes of heavy rains because we are in the era of climate change. You don't know how the pond is going to react. And then you keep working on this, forget the ecology in this aspect, because what life is going to thrive in a cesspool which looks as dirty as this? This is one story. And I'm sure whether you're listening in from Mumbai, Guwahati, wherever across this country, the one thing that binds us as a country is not our religion, not our language, not our food, not anything else, but our ability to abuse lakes and ponds in our neighborhoods. There is a pond like this somewhere in Kolkata, somewhere in Chennai, somewhere in Hyderabad. This is not just Trivandrum story. And then look at the comparison. This is another water body which is near, a little away from Nagpur, 100 odd kilometers away from Nagpur, the heart of Vidarbha, at a place called Bhandara. So this is the Kinhi Gadegaon Reservoir. We revived this water body. It's loading. I'm just so sorry. Yeah, as you can see, the Koka Wildlife Sanctuary forms the background for this large lake. And what you are seeing in front of you is two water holding pockets, roughly around 73 acres. And all that this entire lake needed was calculated deepening so that it can store more water, strengthening of the embankment. And what do I mean by the embankment? The mud wall that you're seeing as a bund. In fact, we are calling that the Great Wall of Bhandara because it's as high as it's as high as 20 meters in some pockets. So we have created an earthen mud wall which is holding the water behind. And you can see these tiny little streams which are running in from the forest. Conservation of lakes and ponds is not about beautification of these water holding structures so that you and I can use it for recreational purpose. When we were trying to work on this lake, the first question most people in the neighborhood had was, are you going to introduce boating? Is there going to be a car park here where we can park vehicles? Is there going to be a food stall? Because for us, all of nature's landscape is for tourism. And then by just adding that one word eco in front of it, we think we're being responsible tourists, which we are not. Certain water bodies need to be kept away from human intervention or human interaction in any case, because there are bears, there are leopards, there are a lot of deers and other ungulates in that Koka Wildlife Sanctuary behind. The only water source that they have is this particular lake. The more we have human interaction with the water body on the offshore side, the foreshore side animals get threatened, and then the whole the conflict of human-animal conflict also comes into play. We are trying to actually pitch in for protected reserves, water bodies to be declared as protected reserves with minimal or no human activity in some pockets, because these are the last zones where we have some of this life still thriving. And this is the good story. We worked on this water body over in the scorching heat of last year's summer, and we were able to finish it, and it's given us tremendous amount of results. And the next one which I'm going to show you again is, this is from Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh. And you look at this, it actually took us 2 days to digest the fact that this lake was 3 times its size. In Telugu, it's called the Chinna Cheruvu, which means the small lake. But this small lake was at least 3 times the size that you're viewing on the image. There are those lake view apartments on that lake now, with the lake not to be viewed anymore. That's unfortunately the urban dream that we are living in. And look at the situation again. This is no different from Trivandrum, as I said. So that's exactly my point. Lakes and ponds across India today are threatened. Despite having such large degree of pollution in it, this lake still supports certain degree of bird population, which fascinates me, because that's survival of the fittest, right? When we started working on this, which we are still, the water quality was so bad that skin-based interaction could also cause large degree infections. And we are looking at a population of roughly around 18,000 people who are living just in the close vicinity. Think about this. Every single non-degradable item that we're using and throwing, if we assume that it's ending up safe somewhere where somebody is recycling, it's not. Ask me, I'll tell you. It's coming to our lakes and ponds. And then there's the biggest problem of leachate. The leachate penetration, which goes into the groundwater, which penetrates to a lot of bore wells and sunk wells, which has a greater health impact, negative health impact. So this is exactly the problem that we're looking at. Ecosystem economics. We do not have to restore the water bodies for the birds, for the snakes, for the frogs. We have to restore these water bodies for our own selves. You and I are spending money for drinking water. You and I are spending money for healthcare and medication. If we continue to do so, we're losing so much of our valuable time, and we fail to innovate. We fail to live a real, true life. If there's a clean lake or a pond, imagine if this Chinna Cheruvu was a fresh water body with tall trees and green foliage around, with all the snakes, the birds, the crabs, the turtles living in it. And if you and I had a small little pocket in the lake where you and I could go sit, read a book. Vijayawada's temperatures go as high as 40, 42 degrees Celsius. And what if this was a reserve, pocket reserve from which drinking water could have been drawn? We've been denied all of this. And none of us is asking for all of this, which is the question. It doesn't have to be an agitation. It doesn't have to be a protest. We're educated, we're literate, and we have a voice. We live in a democratic setup. And that's what makes India's conservation space so exciting, because we are able to work on water bodies such as this. When we walk to the collectorate in Vijayawada, tell them, see, listen, this water body is so bad. We can bring the funding and we have the technical expertise. Can you let us work on this? They do permit. And I think we should take such actions more often and should be spread across. As the principal was saying, NGOs should play a greater role, because all of nature conservation in India cannot be led to the government, because they're extremely understaffed in most cases, and also technical support from greater efforts will see more such pockets revived and restored. But what we need to keep in mind, conservation cannot be about one man, one woman, or one organization. And the cause has to be the hero. We should not become greater than the cause. When we keep that in pace, definitely a lot of conservation efforts can take good shape in India. I'm quickly going to run you through some of these other lakes and ponds we've revived. This one is in Chennai. It's called the Arasan Kadani Lake, a 900-year-old water body. The G-shaped nesting islands that you see is a project innovation from EFI, because we've been deepening the water body at certain pockets. You need these roosting islands that have to be created. Such project innovations in conservation is something which we need to take to the larger public, because when we view a lake or a pond, we only see sheets of water, but beneath those sheets of water there's so much life. There is movement in that water, there is interaction in that water, and that water has been witness to such strong political stories, such cultural stories. We need to present all that. This lake again, a road expansion project which was done aesthetically and sensitively in care for the lake. The road was supposed to come within the lake, but then a people's movement, no protest, no agitation, through the judicial movement, this lake was protected and the road also came in. It's coexistence. We can't just greenwash saying that no development, but if there is development, if there's development, can we look at how we can coexist and sustain for the future? These are recharge wells in smaller ponds which are built across a lot of suburban pockets in Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. And then this used to be, the one that you're seeing right now on your frame, used to be a dumping site. The court suo moto took up this case and asked the government to clear the landfill. After the landfill was cleared, can you look at this, can you look at my cursor as it points? This black patch. This black patch is an indicator of the leachate, even after removal of the garbage. And if you're wondering what happened to the garbage, it was dumped into a larger landfill site. That's it. That's exactly why we're requesting every community where we're working to see if they can refuse and reduce. Recycling, in at least my perspective, is a farce because we don't have the bandwidth for recycling at the rate at which we're consuming and dumping waste. So, and you can see the dual bund structures which are cross-sectional. This is more like playing with Legos, right? You're connecting those Legos to make structures. We've just made it with bigger machinery and we've converted them into lakes and ponds. It's going to take at least 5 to 6 good monsoons to see fresh water return to this water body. Even then, it's not going to be good for direct human consumption, but at least it becomes a habitat and a protected recharge stabilization zone. And these are the different lakes and ponds. This is an uncaring effort in urban infrastructure. Look at how a lake got split into two. And kindly look at this particular portion where my cursor right now is, where the EFI logo is. Can you see what happens? The day the road is laid by cutting the lake into two, people slowly start dumping debris, start encroaching the lake, and they start building. And in one way or the other, the water body keeps shrinking, and one day it completely vanishes. If you recall the 2015 Chennai floods, if earthquakes have an epicenter, even floods have an epicenter. This particular lake was Chennai's epicenter during the 2015 floods. There are videos of that on YouTube. You can go watch. I can even share it with the organizers for you to view later. The bunds broke. The bunds simply broke because this lake is feeding a river downstream. And because of the new embankments which has come as structures, the bund just gave way. Water has a memory and she has to run from the higher spot to the lower spot. And we, in the name of urban infrastructure development, and no, I wouldn't call it poor, but uncaring city planning, just encroach our lakes and ponds. And you see, you take Chennai, Uttarakhand, or Kerala, for example, the landslides at Kavalappana, or the drought in Chennai, all of this is because poor water management. And this has to change from our level. How? When you are at home today, just think about 3 W's: waste, water, and wildlife. The 3 W's that dominate our life today is World Wide Web. But what should technically dominate is waste, water, wildlife. How much plastic and how much non-degradable waste am I generating every single day? And how much of that am I dumping outside? It is going into one or the other natural landscape, lake, pond, river, marsh, or the ocean. Second, water. Where is my water coming from? And how am I using my water? What water am I using for what purpose? Am I using fresh drinking water to flush down my toilet drain? What are the chemicals that I'm sending out through my exhaust water, from my shampoo to soaps and more? We're talking about abandoning international products and looking at Indian-based products. Let's start looking at chemical-free products. And this is again not an attempt to greenwash, but every time we test waters in these lakes and ponds, the algal bloom in the image that you're seeing is an indication of pollution, contaminants, right? How long can we assume that there will be STPs built and there will be treatment facilities done everywhere? We need to take responsibility. And we should not dump our waste into a water body, solid or liquid. When we do these two, wildlife will naturally thrive in these habitats. The snakes, the frogs, the crabs, the turtles, all these lives, they actually depend on such habitats. So let's please start thinking about waste, water, and wildlife this Environment Day. That will help us achieve biodiversity. Thank you for giving me this platform. I sincerely request all of you to volunteer for India and her environment. Just by wanting to do good, we will not achieve anything. We should not just think about doing good, we should, in practical reality, do good. And that's the least we can. Thank you. Jai Hind.
And sir, it was a very enlightening talk. There's there's a question about dam construction on our fragile river systems. How can we say that the power generation through these dams is justified over the destruction they cause to the river habitat?
This is an ongoing tussle, right, between development, our energy requirement, and more. And the public perception on all of this has to change. There was a eminent speaker who spoke about Kaziranga, who said there is so much politics involved in all of this, right? So we should not get sidelined. That's what I feel. Our message of conservation, people should not see us differently from themselves. We need to build a society and a community which says, I will have limited natural sources of energy and the dams are not required on this landscape. Why is it that only a certain population is fighting for no dams on rivers, whereas a larger population is using all that energy? This is exactly where we're getting lost. If we can actually get sustainability to become a part of our life, where we're thinking about what dye was used to make this kurta, or how is this light today getting its power? Am I using renewable, non-renewable sources of energy? In what way? And it's a far-fetched dream, let me tell you, it's a far-fetched dream. In reality, I don't even know if we can achieve that. You're talking about dams across rivers. That's too huge. I'll tell you why. There was a lake in an urban pocket on an arterial road that we restored. 3 months later, the government built a police station right into middle of the lake. We were not able to stop that. A lake which we restored, where we have contacts, where we've been talking to people, we've not able to go stop the construction. The police station is now built. How are public not going to encroach the lake if the police has built a station right into the lake? All legal documents suggest that that area is not a lake anymore. But ethically, ecologically, it is a water body on which the police station has come. If such is the case, how are we going to stop large dam structures which are multi-million dollar projects, which is going to provide energy for large cities, especially a power-hungry nation like India, where electricity is in such demand? How are we going to convince? This is between development and environment conservation. It's a constant tussle. We need to build communities from scratch, and we need to have strong leadership in any political establishment, let it be. I don't care. We need to have environmentally conscious, sensitive leaders. Only then we can stop such things. The river loses its hydrological flow because of these dams. So many different lives get affected. Forget humans for once. Think about all the other dependent lives on that lakes and ponds and rivers. And that's a big cause of worry. But hypocritically, being fed by energy that is powered from a dam, what stand do I take? That's exactly where we are all lost.
No, sir. There is one more question regarding the projects, dedicated projects for cleaning of our rivers, like Project Ganga, Project Jamuna, and there are various projects going on for the same. But years of spending of crores of money in them, still the outcome, there is no productive outcome which is visible. But in the previous days, in the lockdown days, it just took hardly a week or two for seeing a clean river with a lifestyle back, with an aquatic life back. So what's your take on this?
I beg to differ a tiny little bit. I'll tell you why. Almost everybody is super proud that look how humans are all staying indoors. Everybody is listening to the government. I think even there we are being super selfish, right? We're all staying indoors not because the government asked us to stay indoors. We're scared of the virus. And we're super scared that you and I will get infected. That's why we're staying indoors. It's not that we want to do good to the planet, that we're all... Delhi was choking. Delhi was choking. Why didn't we all stay indoors then? When the air quality was so bad, we did not stay indoors. We thought nothing would happen to us because we're all fit and nice. When the virus came in, we stayed indoors. That's it. And if the rivers, certain water bodies, if air is cleaner, it's because industrial pollution has stopped. Has domestic pollution in any way stopped? No, we are still generating solid waste sitting at home. We're still flushing down all the chemicals through our toilets and bathrooms, and we're still contaminating the lakes and ponds and rivers. And when we open up as a nation to the new normal later in the coming few months, we're again going to redo the whole thing. This is a good opportunity. We finally have gotten time to think about what all we've been doing. Why I'm excited is simple as this. When I go to schools, colleges from now on, I will be able to give them a real life example. Until now, I've been only talking to them about in Delhi schools. If I go refer to blue skies, what do the kids know? I have to tell them, olden days when there were blue, clear skies, when the rivers were carrying fresh water. Now at least I can tell them, you remember March to May of 2020 when the skies were blue. I think that's the generational thinking shift which is going to happen because of this lockdown. I'm excited more about that, and whoever is participating in this, who's listening keenly, we all should now try to innovate and collaborate. We all should come together. How are we just not going to talk and actually transform this into activities on field? If we do that, it's a golden opportunity for conservation.
Thank you, sir. It was a very enlightening talk. I think a large number of people will be inspired by this and will contribute towards the environmental conservation and saving our dying rivers. Thank you for your time.